Hey guys, so yesterday a lot of you guys were talking about how the video I made about the social media having too loud of music, and I apologize for that. Um, it's probably due to the fact that I was editing that video in a public place, so I couldn't hear how loud each sound level was. Reason for that is because I've been traveling a lot, so I'm not always home, so I always have to work on the go. So I apologize for that. Hope that one-time thing won't happen again. Anyways, guys. Without further ado, let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights for true scary stories that happened this month. August, yeah.
Lost an iPad, gained a creepy good Samaritan. I am a college student. Recently, about a month ago, I returned from home to my residence near my school. I threw a party. Typically, I don't throw parties, and when I do, have a get-together, it's all people I know. Things got a little out of hand and I had a lot to drink, and it turned into a much bigger event with many strangers I didn't know. This is the typical in college, so I'm not trying to beat myself up over what I realized happening the next morning. The next day, I discovered my brand new iPad mini was missing. I immediately went on iCloud and attempted to see where it was, but it said it could not be located. My final attempt to recover it was locking it from the website. You're able to do this from iCloud on a web browser, and putting a message on the lock screen that said, "If found, called my number." After a few days, I accepted it was gone, and vowed to either hide or lock up my valuable belongings next time I have a party. However, I'm leaning towards never having a party again. A few weeks pass by. I get a text a few days ago from a person claiming they have found my iPad. I was shocked. He expressed a strong interest in getting it back into my hands and said they had been there before, and understood how frustrated I must have felt. He said, "I'm currently an hour away from your town, but I'd be more than happy to drive the distance to get it back into your hands, since I know it belongs to you." He told me it was found in his friend's rental property because the tenants had skipped out and didn't pay rent, but left the iPad behind. I found that somewhat strange, but I believed it. I was shocked that this was happening and very happy. Then things started to get weird. In the beginning, he was very adamant about me giving him my home address to return it, and was willing to plug my address into his GPS right after he supposedly was leaving work to come bring it to me. I don't know this person, so I said I preferred to meet somewhere in public, like a bank with lots of cameras. He then started asking me if I had anything to do with the people who had screwed over his friend, the landlord of the rental property it was supposedly found on. I said I had no idea who it was that stole it, and explained the party situation. Looking back on it, I told him too many details. My first name, the school I went to, and how I got stolen, and admitted I drank a lot that night. I only told him because he was asking me, and I thought he was trying to get some potential details on the criminals. Well, this text conversation turned into a 2-day-long conversation. I felt like there was a power struggle. He would go from sympathizing with me to interrogating me, as if I had something to do with these people, and wasn't simply the victim of theft. He had not been cooperative with my request to meet up in daytime at a public place, even though he said he would various times. "I'll call you tomorrow and we can meet during the day." Then no call. Then all of a sudden, said the iPad wasn't even in his possession, and I would have to talk to his friend about it because he didn't know if I was a drug user or speaking on behalf of the former tenants. Then he would tell me he would try to find a time to meet me, but in the meantime wanted to make small talk, kept trying to ask me details like what classes I'm taking and what I do for fun, but I didn't answer any of them. He acted like I wasn't being nice to him, and I felt like I was being put in a position where I had to jump through hoops to get my iPad back. I was getting very frustrated at this point, and he could tell, and had the audacity to tell me, "Don't be rude with me, Renee. If anything, you should be thanking me. I'm trying to help you." I told him I'm not trying to be rude, but I needed to know whether or not he was going to return the iPad, because I had had enough. He told me he wished I would not give up. After many creepy things he said, I decided to stop responding. Some of the creepier things he said. "You're feisty, I like that. I guess because you're a Jersey girl." He admitted he knew this fact after he stated it because he Googled my area code. "What are you studying in school? What are you doing tonight? Are you going to a party? Out to a bar? Do you ever like talking to people you don't know before even after meeting them in person? I think it's fun. Thank you for this stimulating conversation. I'm very bored at work." Continuously using my first name. "Renee, calm down. We'll get this sorted out." "I'm sorry you feel like this, Renee. So Renee, Can you tell me what happened the night it was stolen? My friend strongly believes this is actually the person who stole the iPad and was trying to lure me into something else. God knows what could have happened if I'd actually given the address. Something was very off. I stopped talking to him, and a friend of mine called the number he was texting from and said, "The girl you're talking to? I know you stole her iPad. Keep it, it's yours. But never fucking talk to her again." He is very protective of me, and even paid for a service online to look up the phone number to try and get the person's information if we had to go to the police. But we found out it was a prepaid phone that wasn't registered to anyone. But the text stopped, and the next day, yesterday, I didn't get any either. Today, however, while in class, I got 2 phone calls from a blocked number. I knew it was the person before I even checked my voicemail. I just had a bad feeling. The voicemail was a person claiming a whole different story. They said, "Hi, my name is Chris, and I just realized this iPad I bought a few weeks ago is stolen. I bought it and just didn't turn it on until now, and the message came up with your number. I'm going to keep trying to get in touch with you so that I can return it to you." It has to be the same person. I'm certain at this point that he wants something from me other than to return it. Otherwise, I would have it back by now, or at least a clear explanation why not. I feel like I'm being played with. He wanted information about me, and now he is pretending to be a different person in order for me to answer again. Since I stopped answering the texts, he sent me about 10 texts asking what I was doing that night before my friend called him. Is this a potential stalker or just harassment? One theory I had is that he may be pretending to be a good Samaritan and then expect a reward for returning the iPad since he can't unlock it and use it. I've heard of cons similar to that. He hasn't called again, and I don't know what to do if he continues to try and contact me. I have a strong feeling he will, though. The worst part about this is that my house was burglarized before. Creepiest part, all the person took was my hair straightener. Even though I have a nice TV, my laptop was at home, jewelry, etc. All my drawers and cabinets were wide open when I got home from school that day. They broke in using a crowbar. That person was caught because he attempted in burglarizing a neighboring house, and the people were home, and got his license plate number. He was a bald man. I currently have no reason to believe this is the same person. I'm actually 99% sure it is someone different. It just made me feel very unsafe now. I didn't look, I just ran. So this happened a couple years back when I was subletting a split-entry house in a small town in Nova Scotia over the summertime. Keep in mind, this house is in a neighborhood, but there is like 20 feet of trees between houses. So it was like mid-August, and I was the only one still living in the house, because my other 2 roommates had moved into the houses they were renting throughout the coming school year. I always tend to get in the habit of staying up super late during the summertime, so this particular night, I'm watching GOT at like 3 a.m. when I hear some frantic, crazy knocking at my door, like serious hammering. I booked it down the stairs, and when I opened the door, this girl with her shirt half torn starts screaming, begging me to let her in. The shirt was like torn off almost. I was trying to get her to settle down and understand exactly what was going on when she freezes for a split second, and her eyes drifted down to the basement staircase behind me. Her eyes shot open so quickly, and she took off screaming like she just saw the devil himself. It took me a second to realize exactly what just happened, and then I just ran, left the door open and everything. I didn't even check to see if anything was actually there. Fortunately, the local police station was like 5 minutes away. The cops went back to my place and did a search but didn't find anything, and they also didn't hear anything else about the girl. I moved out 2 days later, and never went back to that area since. Short hug. It was the end of this August, warm and sunny. I had a night shift behind me, and stayed a bit longer to chat with my colleague, even getting more tired and drowsy. Afterwards, I decided to go to my ex-boyfriend's place to take a nap. He lives in a huge apartment building, with small apartments and cheap rent. It draws a problematic mixture of people, and I would be uncomfortable living there by myself. There is a security guard downstairs all the time, and there are cameras in the entrance and the elevators. When I was coming to the building on that day, it was about 11 a.m. and I was very tired and sleepy. I walked automatically, knowing that the minute I lay down, I'll fall asleep. It's a busy street, but busy for cars only. The building is facing a parking lot and shrubs and trees full of rubbish. Even though there's a decent flow of cars passing me, there is no one walking on the sidewalk. I was just about to turn left to walk up to the house when I felt someone from behind suddenly hugging me around my neck. I stopped perplexed, thinking maybe my boyfriend went out to get some groceries or get something from his car, and I waited for him to say something like, "Surprise, surprise." Well, who else would it be, right? That person stepped in front of me, and it was a laughing young blonde guy I'd never seen before. I stared at him, my eyes open wide, and this conversation ensued. "Excuse me?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For this." I decided that this conversation led to nowhere, and marched quickly left to the building, turned right towards the entrance, and looked behind me. He wasn't following me. The entrance is hidden behind a wall, and there was no one who could have seen the two of us. I said hi to the guard and jumped into the elevator. This random guy casually hugged me from behind, tight and close, with no prior warning or explanation. I have no idea what it was about. If it was meant to be a joke, it was an extremely bad one. I never saw him again. He lit our neighborhood's shed on fire. It was early August in 2013 and also 1 a.m. Cue 12-year-old me. I had my windows open and was talking to an internet friend on Skype when I hear weird noises coming from our yard outside. Being a damn wuss, I decided it was an animal and I wouldn't do anything about it and kept talking with my friend. A day later, my dad tells me that last night some guy came into our neighbor's yard, set his shed on fire, came into our yard, broke into our shed, stole a sledgehammer, and dropped it outside of my window. At that time, it didn't seem very creepy, but looking back on it now, I'm spooked as hell. The murder cabins. So, I'm gonna tell y'all the story of the murder cabins. This happened back one summer when I was 12 to 13, before cell phones were common. My mother rented a cabin that we could stay at about 4 hours north of our home. My father could not attend due to the fact that he was working, but that was fine with him. We drove up to the cabin. It was cute enough from the outside. There were several cookie-cutter cabins you could rent, I think 7 in total, that all arch around in a C shape, with parking spots in front, and at the front of the line of cabins was where the owner of the cabin stayed, the front desk area, if you will. Anyways, when we first arrived, we were the only people there. No other cabins had been rented out, even though it was August and this area, although semi-remote, is a tourist destination, northern Michigan. You know how that is. The gentleman that worked at the front desk and owned the cabins came out to greet us. I didn't pay too much attention, due to the fact that I was 12 and excited for the fun outdoor adventure that my mother and I were going to have. Climbing the dunes, eating ice cream, swimming, having campfires, all the good stuff. Well, I remember him giving Mom the keys and saying, "The bathroom window is broken and does not close all the way nor lock," which, if we were the only people living there, why not give us a room in which the bathroom window locked? We thought it was strange, but kinda just shrugged it off. After a day of adventure, we went out, came back in at dusk, and went to bed. The next morning, Saturday, we woke up and went to get in the truck. It would not start. Strange, I will admit at the time. It was a newer SUV. I don't recall what was wrong with it, but I remember the owner of the cabins coming out and being like, "Aw, your truck is broke? That's too bad, let me call someone." Mom insisted that she could call someone and went into his office, used his phone, and called someone to come fix it. As we were waiting for someone to get there, the owner came out and said, "Did you guys have any problems with the power last night?" Mom and I kinda shook our heads, confused. "Oh well, sometimes in that cabin, the power randomly go out. All you have to do is come out here and flip the breaker." He then proceeded to show my mother where the breaker was, which happened to be outside of the cabin, behind it on a pole. After getting the truck fixed, having another day of adventure, we came back, ready to settle in for the night. As we were sitting in bed watching television, the power went out. It didn't flicker, just boom, out. Mom grabbed the flashlight she had packed, and we went out there and turned the breaker back on. At this point, we were feeling incredibly uneasy, like anyone would be. We got back in bed, and about 10 minutes later, the power went out again. Mom jumped up and ran outside, only to see a man, which I assume was the owner because no one else was there, running away from the fuse box. We hightailed it out of there so fast. Luckily, everything had been packed because we were leaving the next day. But still, creepy cabin owner, let's not meet again. I was always harmlessly flirty with guys I met. This has made me think twice. Last August, Tia met Brett at a little shindig at a tavern up the road from the tiny little town we call home. Things were great. The two of them hit it off as they chatted at the bar. Tia was sitting right next to her husband, and Brett was bitching about his wife. But who doesn't grumble a bit about their spouse when a stag at a bar? Eventually, Tia began bartending at the tavern. Brett became a regular. At this point, they were flirting and friendly, and that was all it took for him to get her number. He started texting her from one phone, and then suddenly stopped and switched numbers around November. Why? His wife found out and was too jealous and controlling to allow their fantastic friendship to continue. Tia laughed it off. Not everyone could have an understanding spouse like she did. She smiled at him as he sat in his usual spot at the end of the bar. Her being her flirty little self got more tips, and it wasn't like he didn't know who she was going home with, right? Speaking of tips, Brett was also a great tipper. He once threw down $100 for a soda and told her to keep the change. Their friendship was, lucrative and harmless, as far as Tia thought. In late February, things started to get a little weird. Brett started showing up at other places. Bowling league games, where she could be. The same restaurant. The school where Tia worked as an aide. Still, the tips kept rolling in, and she didn't see a reason to curb her flirty tendencies. He was just being a good friend, and he needed someone to talk to. His wife sounded like a heinous bitch. Then it happened. One Thursday, he showed up at bowling league and asked to talk to her. His wife had asked him to move out over their relationship. The wild look in his eye finally registered, and Tia asked for space. The next thing she knew, it was a Sunday, and he was pounding shots at the bar. An hour later, she got a call from his phone. It was his wife. She had found a disposable cell he had bought to text her. Did she know that he wanted a threesome? Did she know that he is in love with her? She's the first one in 58 years that she feels uninhibited with, and that having sex with her will kill her intimacy problem. Does she know that this man had created a whole sister-wife fantasy in his head for them to be living out because David had many wives in the Bible, and Tia was his gift from God, and he thanked God for her every day? He asked his wife to have her, not her husband, just her, come to Christmas. There was so much more, but it was interrupted as Brett and his wife struggled around the room because he wanted to go back downstairs and wrap his car around a tree. Plot twist? Brett is my dad. Have you ever wondered how people create these twisted relationships in their minds? Me too. I still do, in fact. Though Tia was a flirty little thing, it definitely wasn't I want to leave my husband to be your sister wife kind of flirty. I keep finding out little tidbits of how he stalked her. Where was he when my horse died? Stalking Tia. Where was he when he said he was at the store? Stalking Tia. So on and so forth. He spent months doing this under our noses, and aside from a wild look in his eye, when he would apparently go for more than a day without seeing her, he had us believe, and we had no clue. Sure, Mom was pissed when she found the text, initially, but after that, nothing. That's the scary part to me. How does that happen? 2 weeks ago, I got called home from an hour and a half away that night because my dad wanted to kill himself over making Tia uncomfortable. You know, since she didn't like the things Mom told her on the phone, things had settled down. But I just found out this morning that he had started emailing her again. So, Mom's shopping for divorce attorneys, and I'm desperately trying to figure out how to let's not meet my own father. Now we keep the porch lights on. In 1996, my parents moved our family from a small town in eastern Canada to a large city on the western side of the country. My dad had finally been promoted to a stable, high-paying job in his company, and my parents wanted to use their newfound income to give us the kind of white picket fence childhood that neither of them had when they were growing up. A few years before I was born, one of my dad's co-workers had been followed home from work and murdered by a total stranger, so my parents have been ultra paranoid about security, and have always been that way. For that reason, they decided to build our house in a wealthy bedroom community outside the city limits, instead of living in the city itself. The town we moved to prided itself on its schools, parks, and low crime rate. It was supposed to be the kind of place where we'd be safe. At the time we moved in, our subdivision was still brand new, mostly made of empty lots for sale. My parents bought a corner lot on a cul-de-sac, so we'd have a big yard to run in and play in. Ours was the first house on the cul-de-sac to be built, so every time a new neighbor moved in, we would be the first to greet them and welcome them to our neighborhood. We assumed that we knew our neighbors pretty well, and we saw no sign that any of them disliked us or held some kind of grudge against us. We did the usual suburban neighbor things: block parties, barbecues, pool parties in our backyard, and no one ever appeared to be acting strangely or harboring ulterior motives. It felt like a completely normal neighborhood. By 2001, when the incident took place, our subdivision was fully developed. All the lots had been purchased, homes had been built, and it was nothing but expensive, cookie-cutter, two-story homes as far as the eye could see. The town had only gotten more expensive since we moved in, and crime was as low as ever. For the most part, the local RCMP didn't have much else to do but issue speeding tickets and shut down noisy parties, which is why what happened to us was so unusual. Through August and September of that year, we'd started getting notes left under the windshield wipers of our cars. I was 9 years old at the time, so my parents never let me read them, but what I gathered from their conversations was that the notes effectively told us we weren't wanted here and that we should leave. At the time, the people who lived on our street were having a bit of a squabble about parking bylaws. There was a concrete island at the center of the cul-de-sac, and the neighbors had gotten into a dispute about whether or not people were allowed to park on it. My parents were in the habit of parking on it, so they assumed that the note was from a disgruntled neighbor telling them to park elsewhere. So my parents started parking in our driveway and on the shoulder of the street, but the notes kept coming, once or twice a week. My parents were unnerved, but when they talked to the neighbors, several of them also reported getting nasty notes about the parking on their windshields, so my parents started parking exclusively in the driveway, hoping that it would stop once and for all. For a week or two, the notes stopped. Then one day, my dad came into the house with a typed 2-page letter that he'd found under the windshield wiper of the truck again. They didn't let us kids read it, but when they talked about it later, I gather that the letter had been an anonymous rant against us, telling us that we didn't belong and that we had to leave. The letter also claimed that the writer knew what we were up to and would make sure we went away. My parents were very upset. We were the least likely people to be encountering any kind of harassment. My dad worked for a train company, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. We left all of our past acquaintances and relatives behind in the East, and we got along famously with all our new friends and neighbors. We couldn't think of anyone who would have a problem with us, not knowing what else to do. My dad typed up a reply letter explaining what had happened and telling the anonymous writer to come speak to us in person if they had a problem with us, and left a copy of it in every mailbox on our street. And for a few weeks that seemed to fix it. No one came forward to speak to us, and the note stopped turning up on our cars. We thought that was the end of it. Then, on the morning of Thanksgiving Day, my dad and I decided to go outside to put up Halloween decorations. We stored the decorations in our attached garage, so while my dad was getting his shoes on in the house, I went out there and clicked the button for the garage door opener, which opened up the big garage door to the driveway. I knew something was wrong before I even knew what I was seeing. There was broken glass everywhere. I screamed for my dad, and he came running out into the garage. It took him a moment to realize what he was looking at, and then he shouted for my mother. Someone had thrown rocks through the windshields of both of our vehicles, and not just rocks, either. These were big, giant boulders, heavier than one person could possibly lift. never mind throw, on their own. One of them had actually crumpled the hood of the car, and the one that hit the truck had bounced off and hit the ground with such force that it cracked one of the blocks of our concrete driveway in half. By this point, there was nothing but suburbs and manicured lawns for several kilometers away in every direction. Whoever had done this had obviously driven some distance to acquire these stones, and had carried them all the way to our house in the dead of night to hurl them through our vehicles. We called the RCMP, and when we spoke to them on the phone, they assumed it was just teenage vandals having some fun of their own. When they got to the actual house, though, they were speechless. Our neighbors all had their own cars out on their driveways, and almost all of them were fancier than our early 90s Toyotas. One of our neighbors had a brand new Jaguar sitting out in the open on his driveway completely untouched. Whoever had done this was specifically after us, and what made the whole thing creepier was that one of the cars was backed into the driveway, while the other had been driven up right to the house. In other words, these rocks weren't thrown out the window while someone drove by. Someone actually had to get out of their car and walk right up to our house and hurl the second boulder through the truck window. They spoke to the neighbors, but no one seemed to know anything about it. A dust of the scene turned up fingerprints on the rocks and the cars that didn't match the family, but a search of the database turned up no matches. To this day, we don't know who did it. None of the neighbors ever mentioned it to us. The damage would have been hard to miss, especially when all the houses on the cul-de-sac face one another, and yet no one asked about the damage or what happened, or why the police had been called. These were people we saw every day, and not a single one of them ever mentioned the incident to us. It was as if it never happened. The police suggested we install floodlights on our porch and the front of our house to deter future crime, and we did. The installations of those floodlights was the only thing that seemed to change after the incident. 14 years have gone by, and we still live on that cul-de-sac with quite a few of our original neighbors. We don't know what we did to cause this. We don't know who was upset with us or why. We'll never find out who was behind any of this. We have no way of knowing if the perpetrator moved out years ago, or if they still live next door, smiling and waving to us every morning. We'll never know. Nothing strange ever happened after that incident, and it really was like the whole thing had never happened. But we still sleep with the porch lights on. Working out may be bad for my health. I found the subreddit of a day after the following encounter happened. Really convenient. I'm female, and I work at a university in a large city. I went to lunch by myself off campus one afternoon last week. I sat at the restaurant's bar, which could seat about 25 people. The bar at the time was empty except for me. The restaurant probably had maybe 4 or 5 people in it otherwise. After I finished eating, I decided to hang out a bit longer, as I was having an incredibly slow day. I was sitting at the bar fiddling with my phone when I heard a male voice behind me. "Is anyone sitting here?" I looked up and there was a guy, motioning towards a seat next to me. "Oh sure, go ahead," I said, thinking he'd sit at least a seat down. Nope, he sat right next to me. Psst, okay. Weird, but whatever. I looked at my phone, trying to ignore the stranger who had decided to sit right next to me, as opposed to anywhere else at the totally empty bar or in the nearly empty restaurant. He was barely in the seat when he said, "Nice day, isn't it?" I smiled a little, looked at him and said, "It is. I can hardly believe it's August." Back to the phone. "Do you work near here?" "I do." Back to the phone. "Where?" "At the university." Back to the phone. "Neat. Me too. What department?" "Blah blah department." Phone. "What do you do?" Okay. Obviously this dude wanted chats. I would be leaving soon anyways, once I paid my bill. I tried to interact a bit, and maybe he'd be satisfied. Even so, "Come on, bartender Joe. I do the following job." "And you?" "I work in recreations, in the ticketing office." "Neat." Smile. Back to the phone. A moment or so passed, and then, "What do you do for fun?" Oh, the usual: go to movies, go to museums, read, I run. But that's not really for fun, is it? Back to the phone. Where do you run? Different places. Back to the phone. Do you ever work out on campus? Nope. Back to the phone. Geez, Joe, come on! Why not? Oh, just more money I don't feel like paying. Back to the phone. Have you ever thought of getting a personal trainer? No, same thing, more money that I don't want to pay. Back to the phone. I'd be happy to do it for free. Huh, neat. Phone. Would you like to set up an appointment? Do you have a card? Then I can contact you. No. But could I have one of yours? Crap on a cracker. Fine. Maybe this will get rid of this guy, or get him to leave me alone. Maybe this is some sort of weird game. Get the girl to give you your number? Yeah. I plucked out one out of my purse and handed it to him. There you go. Phone. Where are you, Joe? I need to get out of here. So, when'd you like to meet? Email me and we'll talk. I am now staring at the phone and not making eye contact with him or looking at him at all. What are your workout goals? I don't really know. Would you want to start out with some stretching or something? Oh, I don't know. We can set up an appointment and go from there. Yeah, email me and we can talk. When could you meet? I need to check my schedule. Joe, come on! What days work best for you? Oh, my schedule is pretty crazy. It changes daily. What times work for you? Not sure. I'd have to check my schedule. Do you ever do any deep breathing? Like meditation? No, like deep breathing, like at your desk. No. We can start with that. Maybe. Email me and we can talk. Would you want to meet next week? Not sure. We can start with that. And then work on a plan for you. Yeah, maybe. Joe, for fuck's sakes, where do you go? When did you meet next week? I don't know. I need to check my schedule. Have you ever done any mat work? What? Like working out on a mat? Yeah, I guess. Do you have a mat at home? Could you bring it? If I decide to do this, maybe. What day next week would work for you? I don't know. Staring at my phone now, hoping he will just leave or that Joe the bartender will magically show up now. I'd like to go ahead and set up an appointment with you. Once I check my schedule, we'll see. Can you check your schedule on that phone? I can. Staring at phone. Check it so that we can make an appointment. No. I really like to get started. Right, email me. Is there a place in your building where we could do this? What? Could we go to an empty room in your building and work out there? No, that is incredibly weird and inappropriate, and I would never do that. Can I get you anything else? I have never been so happy to see you, Joe. No, I want to close out. I slapped my card down on the counter. Thanks. Joe walked off to close me out, and the guy said, okay. So we can just do it on one of the rec centers on campus. Here you go, Joe said, bringing me back my receipt. I signed my name so fast, it looked like a line. Thanks. I got up and walked over to Joe, who was standing at the cash register. The guy got up almost immediately and followed me. I turned around and said, I need to talk to Joe. Have a nice day. He walked off. I looked at Joe and hissed, oh my God, that guy was totally freaking me out. God, I'm sorry. I thought you knew him. He just sat right down next to you. No. Well, he's standing outside, staring at you. I turned around and there he was, on the street, staring in the window at me. I'm going to talk to you until he leaves. Okay. We make small talk for about a minute more. Then Joe said, okay, he's gone. I left and headed back towards campus. I got to a corner and poof, there he was. As soon as I saw him, I immediately took out my phone and pretended to talk as I nearly ran to my building. I got into the lobby and turned around. Nope. Not there. Bang Bang. This is a story I've grown up with that I thought I would share after browsing the posts on the subreddit. It's my first post, so bear with me, guys. A little backstory. I was born in Duluth, Minnesota in 1992. This story ends on August 1st, 1993. I was baptized in a local Lutheran church, and two wonderful friends of my great-grandmother and the rest of the family were named as my godparents. My godparents were especially close with one woman, who frequently spent time with my entire family, as she was well liked by all. Not as well liked was her boyfriend. He was alright, but for one reason or another, or just hindsight being 2020, something about him seemed off. He would attend family functions and would play make-believe games with me, Being a 1-year-old who probably loved the attention, the last game that he played with me was a make-believe shooting game. He put his thumb and forefinger out in the stereotypical gun shape and said with an eerily straight face, "Bang, bang. I killed you." And I giggled at him. My mother remembers being extremely put off by this and took me from his lap. Shortly after, he was broken up with our family friend for some reason or another. I believe he was overly possessive, and it just wasn't a healthy relationship. This brings us to August 1st. My family had planned on attending a get-together at this woman's house. I refrained from names, as I haven't had any contact with her family and wouldn't want to upset anyone, you know what I mean. The total guest list included my immediate family of 4, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my 2 uncles, and my godparents as well. Due to various reasons, including bad traffic, laundry, captivating television, and my parents taking forever to load up my diaper bags, the only people who showed up on time to the lunch were my godparents. They and their friend were shot to death by her ex, who had apparently enough ammo to murder my entire family. Knowing this was the time and date of the family gathering, since no one else had arrived, he then returned to his apartment and shot himself in the head. My great-grandparents found their bodies. I always get anxious when hearing the retelling of this day, how my family missed death by mere minutes, and how bang bang wasn't really a game. Let's just say, tragic domestic violence, #Let'sNotMeet. You can certainly find the names and a few details by Googling the city and date. I just felt uncomfortable giving it outright. Someone who lives with you is with me. So, this is my first post here, and this is possibly in the top 5 scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm a 19-year-old female, and this happened in late August, early September 2012. I don't remember the exact date. As a child, my biggest fear was somebody breaking into my house. I don't know why, since I lived in a very wealthy and safe neighborhood, where break-ins very rarely happened. But that was my biggest childhood fear, not the monster under the bed or a ghost in the closet. I was scared a legit bad person breaking into my bedroom window. So a few months ago now, my ex-boyfriend was working this terrible job at a bowling alley, where he closed nearly every night, meaning he wouldn't get home from work until around 3:30 to 4 a.m. in the morning. I usually waited up for him, because I had trouble sleeping alone, but on this one particular night, I had work very early the following morning, so I had opted to go to bed. It was very creeping being in our condo alone, and it took me a while to sleep. It's mostly eerie because we live on the first floor, and our bedroom window is on the wall to the left of the front door. There are also a set of stairs not very far from our doorstep that led to the upstairs condos. I know that doesn't necessarily sound creepy, but when you're hearing people walk around outside your bedroom window all night, well, you get the idea. This one night, it took me a little longer than usual to fall asleep. I think this was a Friday night, but I finally passed out around 1:30 a.m., close to 3 a.m. I kind of slowly come to consciousness as I hear the front door knob being turned. I initially got excited, thinking that it was my boyfriend finally coming home from work, and started to get up to go meet him. I knew he hated that job and tried to be extra affectionate when he did arrive home. I'm halfway out of bed when I realize the door isn't opening. I hear someone start cursing outside my window. I stopped to listen for a second, thinking maybe I heard someone opening the door upstairs. The sound I heard sounded like someone trying to jimmy the door and then make a kick at the wall out of frustration. My bedroom wall, right under my window, right next to where I was sitting. Looking back on this, I should have just called the cops right there, but my half-asleep mind wasn't so intelligent. I thought maybe my boyfriend had forgotten his key or something, so incredibly smart me decides to go check it out, like those blondes in the horror flicks. So I get up, put on pants and a hoodie, grabbed my phone and left my bedroom. My half-asleep mind, while being unintelligent, had that part that realized, oh shit, this is a bad idea, because I stopped in the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and hid it in my hoodie. I slowly opened the front door, and at first, I didn't see anyone, so I started to close the door. But then this older guy walked back around the corner. My mind was screaming that something was wrong the moment I saw him. He was probably in his 50s or so. He had wrinkly skin, white gray hair, and a couple teeth missing that I saw when he smiled at me. He was slightly bent over, like he had a hunched back, and he was wearing a dirty t-shirt, rag jeans, and carrying a black duffel bag. "Hey, I have your, someone who lives with you is with me. She's really tipsy, and said she needed a ride home." His voice low and raspy, as he takes a hesitant step in my direction. My initial thought was my now ex-boyfriend's crazy drug-addicted ex-girlfriend was on a trip and thought she still lived here. I started to get pissed, but then I remembered she was still in jail, so that wasn't possible, and I'm trying my best to analyze that situation. He's still stepping closer to me. I closed the door a little more and said, "I'm sorry, no other woman besides myself lives here." "What? This is the 1234 pretend address lane, right?" He didn't look like he believed me, and his voice was getting a bit of anger to it, which only frightened me more. "Yeah, but there's no other girl besides myself who lives here." My voice sounded a lot more confident than I actually felt. "Is there another pretend address lane?" He's about 2 feet away from me at this point. I can smell his nasty breath, and gotta look at this crazed look in his eye. "No, there isn't." I'm getting this mega creeps, and at this point considering calling the police. The way he was protectively holding that black duffel bag told me it was bad news in there. Our conversation was pretty much a cycle of the above for several minutes, and that's when I realized this guy wasn't just a little off. He was definitely not alright. Whether he was drunk or high, I don't know, and frankly, I didn't care. He was swaying slightly and still smiling creepily down at me. I'm very petite. I wish I could describe the way he was smiling at me better, but there are no words, and it still gives me the chills to this day. At this point, I'm getting really scared because he keeps gesturing to the woman in question, but I can't see her. She's not in my view at all, so I'm beginning to wonder if there even is someone with him, or if he tried to break in and was covering his ass with all this bullshit story. I basically decide I'm done with this and close the door when he turns and starts to talk to someone I can't see. "Hey man, is this the only 1234 pretend address?" My now ex-boyfriend walks into view at this point. Yeah." He gives me the "are you okay" look, and I gave him the "I'm fucking terrified" look. He gets the message and slides into the space between the guy and myself, then pushed back so he was standing in the doorway, and I was now in the house. The whole time, my boyfriend is talking to Mr. Creepy, who eventually asks for a phone. My boyfriend tells him to wait a second so that he can put his things down. We close the door. My boyfriend tells me he's going to go out there and that I need to call the police. However, he opens the door and a cop is already questioning him. Apparently someone else in the condo saw him driving around without any lights on, all sketchy and like that, and called the cops. The officer later told us that he asked the guy if he had seen a black car, and the guy replied to say that he had a black car. Turns out there really was a woman with him. She had lived at the address 6 years ago and had been evicted, but never changed her driver's license. They'd been at a party, and he tried to go home with her. We watched while the cops searched them and arrested them. They found straws and coke in the woman's purse and more straws in the guy's pockets. When we showed him the black bag that had been left near our door, the cops opened it up and found bricks of coke. Then, not long after, that an ambulance had to be called, as the woman was overdosing, and had been passed out in the grass the whole time the guy was talking to me. The guy apparently was later to have been found to have a combination of coke, alcohol, and meth in his system. Fucking idiot. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it. That guy was high out of his mind, probably had no idea what he was doing, and could have done a lot of really bad things. I'm just thankful my boyfriend and the cops showed up when they did.